Hey guys, tonight we're beginning something a little different. Something soft, something slow, and something meant to ease you into a long, peaceful night of rest. Before we step into the world of ancient gold roots and the quiet empire they created, I want you to take a moment for yourself. If you enjoy what I do here, you can like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely feel connected to this kind of slow storytelling. It's always wonderful to see how many of you watch from all around the world, so feel free to share where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Those little moments make this space feel warm, like a small campfire we all gather around at night. Now, wherever you are, let's begin to settle in. I want you to place your device down gently. If you're listening on your phone, rest it beside you so you don't have to hold it anymore. Make sure you're comfortable. Make sure your pillow is soft and inviting. And when you're ready, go ahead and close your eyes. Let the rest of the room fade away a little. Feel the air around you. If you have a fan on, listen to that soft background hum. If the lights are still on, dim them or turn them off completely. Let the darkness wrap around you the way nighttime always does, slow and quiet and comforting. Take a breath in, not too deep, just enough to notice it. Then let it go. Let your shoulders sink down. Let your jaw unclench. Let your hands relax where they are. Nothing needs to be done right now. Nothing needs to be solved or figured out. All that's needed is you, resting, listening, and drifting. Tonight, I want to take you somewhere gentle, somewhere far away from notifications, tasks, and the busyness of your own thoughts. We're going to wander back in time, farther than you normally imagine, past the old kingdoms you've heard of, past the stories of explorers and kings, and into a world shaped not by battles or loud victories, but by something much quieter. A world shaped by the movement of gold. Not the glittery, glamorous kind you see in jewelry stores today, but the warm, ancient gold carried by travelers who walked slowly beneath wide skies. People who moved across mountains, deserts, and forests without rushing, without noise, without the idea of an empire, yet somehow created one anyway. An empire without borders, without kings, without armies. An empire built on quiet footsteps, on trust, and on the soft glow of gold exchanged under firelight. As you keep your eyes closed and settle deeper into your pillow, I want you to imagine the night around you stretching out like the ancient sky did above those travelers. Calm, open, endless. Imagine that we're beginning a journey together, not in a hurry, not trying to reach a destination, but simply walking through history at a peaceful, sleepy pace. Your only job right now is to listen, to let your mind drift, to rest. Let your breathing slow just a little more. Let your body feel heavier. Let your thoughts loosen at the edges, like threads gently slipping free. Tonight's story is soft. It won't rush. It won't surprise you. It won't ask anything of you. It's here to keep you company while you relax and slowly drift into dreams. So with your eyes closed, your body calm, and your thoughts settling like a dust in warm light, let's take the first step into the world of hidden paths, glowing gold, and the quiet empire that rose from ancient roots. Chapter 1. The quiet beginnings of gold and early wanderers. As we begin this first chapter, keep your eyes closed and let your breathing stay soft and steady. There is nothing you need to picture perfectly. Just let the words wash over you like a gentle breeze. Let them drift in and out, the way early morning sunlight fades through curtains. Our story begins long before maps, long before kingdoms rose and fell, long before anyone imagined trade routes or distant lands. It begins in a much quieter moment, A moment when early wanderers walked through valleys and riversides, not searching for wealth or power, but simply for food and shelter, moving with the seasons as softly as clouds across the sky. Back then, the world felt much larger. Mountains were not shapes on a horizon. They were impossibly tall walls rising into the sky. Forests were deep and endless. Rivers were long ribbons of water that people followed for days, then weeks, then seasons. Life was slow. Life was gentle. Long before history kept records, people lived moment to moment, guided by the rhythm of the earth. And somewhere in this ancient world, someone noticed something unusual. Along a stream bed, in the quiet space where water curled around stones, something shone, not brightly, not in a dramatic way, but with a warm little glow, a soft, mellow gleam that was different from the grey of stone or the dull brown of mud. A piece of gold. Imagine that early human kneeling down by the water, their hands dipping into the cold stream as they reached for it. There was no concept of currency or wealth yet, just curiosity, the kind of simple curiosity you might feel when you pick up a perfectly smooth pebble or a shell from the beach. Something about it felt special, even if they couldn't explain why. Gold was strange. It didn't rust. It didn't fade. It didn't crumble like other stones. Even in the darkness, it held a tiny whisper of light, almost as if it breathed. People kept it because it felt pleasant to hold, because it looked different from anything else in nature, because when they traded objects with nearby families or communities, gold always caught the eye first. Not because it had value, but because it had presence. As you listen, let your mind drift into that ancient moment. Imagine soft sunlight warming your skin. Imagine the trickling sound of the river as it moves over stones. Imagine the distant calls of birds in tall trees. Everything quiet, everything natural, everything unhurried. Gold spread slowly at first. One person would find a piece and keep it. Then someone else would notice it and ask where it came from. Little by little, gold traveled, carried in pockets made from animal hide or tied with strips of bark or tucked gently into small woven pouches. It never traveled fast. Nothing did. People walked from place to place. They rarely rushed. There were no roads, no wheels, no animals pulling carts. Just footsteps. Quiet, steady footsteps across soft earth. And with those footsteps, the first tiny, innocent movements of gold began. Over time, people noticed that the places where gold appeared tended to be near rivers that had flowed for hundreds or even thousands of years. These rivers weren't just water. They were pathways, natural guides in a world where everything else felt unpredictable. Humans began to gather near them. They camped on the riverbanks and shared stories around low fires. They hunted and fished and collected fruit nearby. And when the water ran low in summertime, they would search the shallow edges for small glints of gold. Back then, gold wasn't a goal. It was simply a companion of the river, something people stumbled upon while living ordinary lives. Imagine early wanderers walking along those riverbeds, their feet pressing softly into wet sand, their shadows long and gentle against the water as the sun lowered in the sky. Maybe they held small pieces of gold in their hands, turning them over slowly, feeling the smoothness and weight, fascinated by the way it seemed to reflect even the faintest light. Many centuries passed like this. Entire generations lived and died with gold being nothing more than a pretty, curious material. It was used for ornaments or exchanged in early bartering. Sometimes it was shaped into beads or tiny charms that parents gave their children as keepsakes. Life was simple. Life was quiet. And gold was simply part of that quiet world. As you listen, let your body feel a little heavier. Let your mind soften around the edges. These early humans walked through a calmer world. A world with no clocks, no deadlines, no rush. A world guided only by sunrise and sunset, and by the natural needs of life. Eventually, as small groups began to move and settle in different regions, gold traveled with them, not as treasure, not as currency, just as a small piece of beauty they chose not to leave behind. And slowly, patterns formed. People noticed that certain regions had more gold than others. They noticed that traveling in certain directions led to different kinds of stones, different plants, different climates. They began to understand the land more deeply. They learned which seasons brought the most rainfall, which rivers dried up, which valleys supported the most wildlife. This knowledge traveled along with them. Knowledge was as valuable as anything tangible. The early world was built on shared wisdom and quiet observation. And within this slow exchange of ideas and objects, gold began to matter a little more. Not because it was rare, but because it connected people. When someone visited another group or traveled with a story to share, they often brought a piece of gold as a gift. Not a grand offering, just a gesture, like handing someone a smooth stone, something comforting, something warm. These exchanges were gentle, they were friendly. They were the earliest steps toward relationships between communities who would otherwise remain strangers. And with those relationships, the first hints of a route began to form. Not a formal path, not a marked trail, but a loose understanding that traveling in certain directions led to certain people, and that those people might have stories, skills, or small treasures worth discovering. In this way, the earliest gold paths were born without anyone realizing it, not carved into the earth, not drawn with intention, but created naturally by the movement of people who enjoyed sharing small pieces of beauty with one another. As you lie here, listening softly, try to imagine a world where everything is slower and simpler. A world where travel means walking beneath open skies. A world where every night ends around a fire, with stars overhead and the sound of wind moving through trees. These ancient travelers didn't know they were shaping history. They didn't know that centuries later, people would trace their footsteps. They didn't know that the little gleam of gold they carried would one day influence civilizations, cultures, and entire economies. All they knew was the rhythm of their own footsteps and the comfort of the world around them. Let your breathing slow again. In the calmness of this first chapter, we've seen how gold began its journey, softly, quietly, without purpose or power, simply discovered by curious hands and carried by curious hearts. This is where every empire begins, not with conquest, not with ambition, but with something small and honest. Chapter 2. Footpaths that became lifelines. As we move into this next chapter, keep your eyes closed. Let your breath stay slow and steady. Feel the weight of your body sinking a little deeper into whatever you're resting on. Let the story settle over you like a warm blanket. There's no need to focus too hard. Just let the images rise softly in your mind, the way mist rises from the ground at dawn. We're going back now to a time when the world was still mostly untouched, where the land stretched out wide and natural, without the lines and borders we know today. In that early world, people traveled in small groups, guided by instinct, by weather, and by the gentle patterns of nature. Their paths were not roads or trails. They were simply the places where many feet had passed before, pressing the earth a little flatter with each journey. These footpaths started as almost nothing. A faint line in the grass, a narrow gap between bushes, maybe a clearing made by animals long before humans ever walked there. They were small, barely noticeable, easy to miss unless you were looking for them. But slowly, softly, step by step, they began to form. Imagine these early travelers walking through tall grass that brushed against their legs. Picture a small path winding between wildflowers and stones. The breeze is warm. The sky is wide and pale blue. The world is quiet except for the rustling of leaves and the sound of footsteps that move steadily forward. These footsteps are gentle, but they begin to shape the land in subtle ways. Over time, paths like these became familiar. People would walk them to reach certain rivers, or to find good places to hunt, or to visit groups they had met seasons before. They weren't planned. They simply appeared as a natural result of people wandering, exploring, and living their lives. These paths connected places that were once isolated. A valley to a river to a clearing to a hillside, and soon, without anyone deciding it should happen, a quiet network of trails began to weave through the land. In this chapter, we are watching the earliest beginnings of connection, soft, unspoken connection. Each path carried stories, and each story carried meaning. People would walk for days, then return to their own families and tell them what they had seen. The shape of the world slowly unfolded through these small exchanges. Remember that gold had already begun its gentle journey, traveling from one group to another. And now these paths, these natural lines drawn by footsteps, became the routes along which gold could travel even farther. Not quickly, never quickly. The world was too big and too quiet for speed. Everything moved at the pace of a relaxed heartbeat in harmony with the land. Imagine walking one of those early footpaths. The air is warm. You're surrounded by tall trees that sway gently in the wind. Sunlight breaks through the branches in soft, scattered patches. Every step feels steady and light. You hear nothing but the leaves beneath your feet and the occasional distant call of a bird. You are not alone. Others have walked this same path for generations. Young people walking for the first time. Older people moving slowly but with knowledge of the land. Each footprint adds to the quiet history of the trail. Each journey strengthens it a little more. When early groups met along these paths, the encounters were usually peaceful. People recognized one another from past seasons, or exchanged simple greetings with travelers from afar. Sometimes they traded stories, tools, or food. Sometimes they traded gold, passing the warm metal from one hand to another. It was never a formal trade, never a structured system, just human connection, people meeting people, lives touching gently for a moment before drifting apart again. These footpaths carried more than footsteps. They carried trust, and trust was the foundation of everything that followed. Picture small gatherings along the trails, people sitting near a campfire, the flames flickering softly against the darkness of night. Maybe they're sharing fruit or dried meat. Maybe they're showing each other simple objects they've made. Beads carved from bone, tools shaped from stone, or a small piece of gold smoothed by years of being held. The fire crackles, the stars glimmer above, and somewhere in those quiet moments, relationships begin to form. These connections turn simple paths into lifelines, linking groups across great distances. As you lie there listening, let your body settle even deeper. Imagine earth beneath your feet, warm and solid. Imagine the sense of calm that comes from knowing you're traveling a familiar route. One walked by countless others before you. There is comfort in these paths, comfort in knowing the land guides you. Slowly, these small trails grew more defined. When enough people followed the same route, the grass stayed flattened, the bushes grew farther apart, the soil beneath became smooth, the path became easy to recognize, even if you had never walked it before. And as the path became clearer, travel became easier. Families could predict where to find fresh water or shelter along the way. They knew which seasons were safest to travel. They learned where storms were common, or where the land tended to flood. Knowledge, once again, was passed from person to person, generation to generation. Knowledge travelled alongside gold. Both were carried by these unplanned natural paths. Over time, the routes reached farther. Some led through vast stretches of grassland. Others wound through forests or crossed wide rivers. Some climbed gentle hills where travellers could look out over the land and see the path stretching behind them like a soft ribbon in the earth. Every path had a story, even if no one wrote it down. A story told quietly through footsteps and memory. These paths became the veins of early society. They were how people shared ideas, resources, comfort, and companionship. Without them, groups would have remained isolated. With them, the world began to feel a little smaller, a little more connected. These were not highways or grand roads. They were simple, human-shaped threads that wove together the early fabric of civilization. As you lie here, let the idea of those threads soothe you. Imagine them stretching across the land like gentle lines drawn in soft soil. They aren't straight. They aren't perfect. They wander the way people do, quietly, slowly, naturally. And as they formed, gold traveled farther than ever before. A small piece found in one valley might end up hundreds of miles away, carried peacefully by hands that appreciated its warmth and beauty. When people showed it to others, it awakened curiosity and wonder, the same kind that started this whole journey. And so, step by slow step, the world grew more connected. These humble footpaths were the first signs of something larger forming, something no one could see yet, something no one intended to build. A network of life and movement that would one day become the foundation for an empire unlike any other. Not an empire of war, not an empire of conquest, but an empire of connection and quiet exchange. The paths that began as simple trails were becoming lifelines, and through them, the heartbeat of a hidden empire began to pulse softly through the land. Chapter 3. Caravans moving like silent rivers. As we move into this next chapter, allow your body to settle even more deeply into whatever surface is supporting you. Let your eyes stay closed. Let the muscles around your face soften. Let your breathing fall into a quiet rhythm. You are not in a hurry. The story will move slowly, like the ancient caravans we are about to follow. By now, the footpaths of early travelers had begun to stretch across vast distances. They were no longer just lines worn into the earth. They were gentle guides, connecting one community to another across rivers, hills, grasslands, and forests. These paths began to gather travelers in small groups, and then in larger ones. Over time, these groups evolved into caravans. A caravan in those days was not a loud procession. There were no heavy wheels creaking, no large crowds pushing through the dust. Instead, imagine a soft line of travelers moving at the slow, steady pace of breathing. Families walked together. Hunters, gatherers, craftspeople, traders with small packs, and sometimes even animals that had slowly become companions to humans over many generations. These caravans were never in a rush. The world did not yet know speed the way we do today. Everything moved at the pace of footsteps and daylight, and so caravans drifted across the land like quiet rivers, flowing with the landscape rather than cutting through it. Picture a caravan early in the morning. The sky is still pale, with hints of gold and grey. The air is cool, brushing gently against their skin. People rise quietly from their sleeping places, stretching out the stiffness from the night. They gather their belongings, roll up woven mats, and tie their bundles with calm, practiced hands. There is no shouting, no urgency, only soft murmurs and the crackling of a fading fire as they prepare to walk again. The caravan sets off in a long, gentle line. Their feet move in soft rhythm, brushing the earth in a way that leaves only the faintest imprint. Some walk in conversation, sharing stories or memories. Others walk silently, enjoying the quiet company of nature. Children might wander a little to the sides, picking up interesting stones or pointing at animals in the distance. The early world greeted them with open arms. The rustling of trees, the songs of birds, the steady hum of insects, the whisper of wind moving across the land. Each sound blended into a peaceful backdrop, making the journey feel like a long, calming walk rather than a difficult expedition. Among the packs they carried were small objects for trade, dried fruits, tools made from stone or bone, simple beads, soft furs to share in colder seasons, and of course, here and there, nestled in the warm folds of cloth or tucked safely into small pouches, were pieces of gold. Not much, just enough to pass from one group to another, continuing its quiet journey through the world. As the caravans moved, the paths became clearer. Each step pressed the soil a little more firmly. Each group added their own memory to the land, strengthening the connection between places. Before long, these paths stretched so far that entire regions, once separated by great distances, fell closer. Imagine walking alongside one of these caravans. You are surrounded by people moving at a gentle, human pace. You hear soft footsteps on dirt, the quiet tapping of walking sticks, the occasional jingling of small ornaments carried by travelers. The air is warm and comforting, filled with the earthy scent of plants crushed gently underfoot. Every so often, the caravan pauses, maybe to rest near a river where water flows cool and clear over smooth stones, maybe to stop in the shade of a large tree that has stood for generations, offering shelter to anyone who passes beneath its branches. During these stops, people share food, drink water, and rest their feet. These are moments of community, even among strangers. A traveler from one part of the land might sit beside someone from another region entirely. They might speak different languages or carry different traditions, yet they find common ground in the simple act of resting together. Sometimes, these shared moments lead to small exchanges of gifts or knowledge. It is here, in these soft pauses, that gold often changed hands. Someone might offer a piece of gold in exchange for a tool they needed. Another might trade it for food to carry onward. Others kept it simply because it felt good to hold, a quiet reminder of the people they had met along the way. Gold was not yet a symbol of status. It was simply part of the world, passed gently from one hand to another, like a smooth pebble or a favorite keepsake. But every time it moved, it traveled farther. It crossed rivers. It passed through forests. It reached new lands and new people with each quiet step of the caravan. As you listen to this, let your body relax a little deeper. Imagine the slow sway of walking, the gentle heat of sunlight warming your shoulders, the steady rhythm of breathing as you travel peacefully with the group. There is no rush. The world stretches endlessly ahead, and the caravan will walk as long as it needs to. Over time, the caravans became a kind of moving community. People helped each other carry belongings. They protected each other when storms rose unexpectedly, or when wild animals wandered too close. In these shared challenges, they grew closer. Their trust grew stronger, and the footpaths they followed became more than lines in the earth. They became lifelines for entire regions. Every caravan brought something new to the places it passed through. A song from a distant valley, a tool crafted in a faraway village, a story heard during a cold night near a river, and often a small glimmer of gold that had traveled farther than anyone could imagine. Slowly, gold became known for its journey rather than its appearance alone. People understood that if someone carried gold, it meant they had traveled. They had seen far-off places. They had met people from other lands. Gold was becoming a quiet symbol of connection. Imagine a nighttime scene along the caravan route. A fire burns low, sending warm light across the faces of the travelers. They sit in a circle, telling gentle stories, while stars shimmer overhead. The night is cool but comforting. The air smells of wood smoke and wild grass. Somewhere nearby, a river murmurs softly, flowing as steadily as the caravan moves during the day. In this gentle glow, you can picture gold glinting faintly in someone's hand, reflecting the flickering firelight, not bright, not intense, but soft and warm, just like the mood of the camp around it. These are the moments that built the hidden empire. An empire made not through force or orders, but through quiet companionship, through shared footsteps, through the soft, steady exchange of gold, knowledge, and trust. As you rest, let the image of these slow-moving caravans carry you deeper into relaxation. Picture them stretching across the land like calm, winding rivers, flowing through valleys, sliding along hillsides, moving gently under the open sky. This slow movement created the veins of connection that would one day support something far bigger than anyone of that time could imagine. These caravans were the living threads that wove distant lands together, and with each step, the empire grew silently, without even knowing it existed. Chapter 4. Towns that glowed in the firelight. As we begin this chapter, take a moment to readjust your pillow or blanket. Let yourself sink a little deeper into comfort. Keep your eyes closed, or if they open for a moment, gently let them fall shut again. Let your breathing drift into a soft rhythm, like waves touching the shore. The world around you can fade for now. Tonight, it is just you, resting quietly, while the story moves slowly forward. By the time caravans had begun to travel regularly along the ancient paths, something new started to happen. People began gathering in certain places more often than others. Maybe because the river curved in a helpful way. Maybe because the land was flat enough to rest on. Or because food sources were steady. These places were never chosen with intention or design. They simply felt right. And over generations, those feelings shaped something beautiful. Little by little, these resting places became towns. Not the busy towns we know today, not crowded markets or bustling streets. These were small clusters of homes and tents, built with whatever the land offered. Wooden huts near forests, simple clay structures near dry regions, woven shelters near grasslands. Every home was shaped with care and warmth, made for families who lived close to the earth and relied on one another. When caravans arrived at these places, the towns would fill with soft activity. Children would laugh as they ran to greet the travelers. Adults would share stories by the fires, and travelers, weary from long walks, would find comfort in a warm meal and a place to sleep. Imagine one of these early towns at sunset. The sky is turning a deep, gentle orange. Smoke rises lazily from small fires lit outside the homes. People sit beside them, cooking simple meals, the scent of roasted grains and herbs drifting through the air. The sounds of conversation blend into a peaceful hum. No one is shouting. No one is rushing. The entire scene is slow and serene, like a painting that moves only when the wind stirs. As night settles deeper, the fires glow stronger, lighting the paths between the hut with a warm golden shimmer. This glow was often the first sign that a traveler was approaching a town. Long before they could see the people, they saw the firelight, flickering gently like fallen stars resting on the earth. These towns became havens, places where travelers could wash in the river, mend their clothing, share food, and exchange small gifts. And gold, carried softly from traveler to traveler, began to appear here more often. Not in huge quantities, just small pieces, a bead, a tiny nugget, a sliver carved into a simple charm. Gold, with its warm glow, began to fit in naturally with the firelit evenings. When a traveler held up a piece of gold, the reflection of the flames made it look alive. It sparkled softly, almost as if it remembered every hand it had passed through and every path it had taken. People in these towns did not see gold the way we do today. To them, it was just another part of the world. Beautiful, yes. Mysterious, yes. But not something that controlled lives or decisions. Instead, gold was used to honor connections. If someone from the caravan had helped a villager or shared food in a time of need, they might receive a small piece of gold as thanks. These exchanges were gentle and heartfelt, not transactions, just gestures of kindness. As you listen, imagine sitting by one of those fires. The air is cool. You feel the warmth of the flames on your face. The sky is filled with stars, bright and steady. In the distance, you hear the soft murmur of a river flowing. You smell the earthy scent of the night, mixed with smoke from the fire. And around you are quiet conversations, simple laughter, and the rhythmic crackle of burning wood. People in these towns lived with the rhythms of the land. They listened to the wind. They watched the seasons change with patience. They built their homes with their own hands, yet everything was done slowly, with care. Nothing was rushed. Nothing was forced. When caravans stayed for a few days, they brought stories from faraway lands, tales of mountains taller than anything the villagers had ever seen, rivers wider than their imaginations, valleys where gold was found in larger pieces, or lands where the sky seemed endless. These stories helped the towns grow in more ways than one. They shaped the people's sense of the world beyond their horizon. They strengthened their desire to connect with others. And soon, they began to offer goods of their own to passing travelers. Tools they had made, dried meat from hunts, woven cloth dyed with natural colors, and small gifts of kindness that held more meaning than gold itself ever could. Because travelers returned to these towns again and again, something even more meaningful happened. Paths converged. 2 or 3 different routes began to meet at the same place, weaving together like strands of a braid. Towns that sat at these junctions became especially important. They grew slowly but steadily, becoming soft centers of connection where countless stories and journeys overlapped. Even though no one named them or claimed authority, these places became hubs of the early world. They were the heartbeats along the routes, keeping the caravans healthy, fed, and connected. Imagine walking through one of these towns on a warm evening. The fires glow on both sides of the path. Families sit together, talking quietly. Travelers rest nearby, leaning against their packs, grateful for a break. Children chase each other in circles, their laughter light and joyful. Two elders sit beneath a tree, speaking of seasons long past. Near the river, someone plays a gentle rhythm on a simple wooden instrument. Everything feels peaceful. Everything feels safe. And gold, in its quiet way, becomes woven into this life. A child might hold a small bead of gold as a keepsake. A traveler might offer a piece as a token of friendship. A villager might shape it into a charm to carry on long journeys. Gold was no longer just a curiosity found by early wanderers. It was becoming a thread in the fabric of these towns, a soft glow connecting countless people through countless little moments. As you rest and listen, allow that glow to fill your imagination. Let it flicker like firelight behind your closed eyes. Let the warmth settle into your breathing, calming you even further. Picture a world where people live gently, helping one another, forming bonds without needing words to explain them. These towns, with their glowing fires and quiet traditions, became the resting points of a growing world. A world that was slowly beginning to understand itself. Each town was a pause in the long journey of gold, a place where its story was shared, admired, and passed on once more. And soon, these resting points would become the foundation for something larger, something that no one could see yet, but everyone helped create simply by living, sharing, and traveling. Chapter 5. The Hidden Empire Without Crown. Before we drift into this chapter, take a moment to settle your body. Let your shoulders loosen. Let your jaw unclench. Allow your breath to move in a soft, steady rhythm. If your eyes opened, let them close again, as naturally as the sky dims at dusk. You are safe here, and the story will hold you. Now imagine the world as it was in those early times, when towns glowed gently at night, and caravans moved like slow rivers across the landscape. There were no kingdoms on maps, no borders drawn by rulers, no great walls marked the edges of anything. The world existed in a kind of openness, connected only by the paths people walked and the trust they carried in their hearts. And yet, without anyone planning it, something remarkable was forming. An empire, but not the kind we read about in history books. This empire had no king, no queen, no throne, and no army. There were no flags waving, no palaces rising against the sky. Instead, it was an empire made from connections, kindness, and the steady movement of people and goods. Every traveler, every village, every firelit gathering played a part in building it, even though no one ever called it an empire at the time. This was the hidden empire without a crown. It grew quietly, without asking for recognition. It expanded without battles or conquest. It stretched across continents, because humans are naturally drawn to share what they have, learn from others, and move through the world with curiosity. If you were to step into this world with gentle footsteps and look around, you wouldn't see anything that screamed power. You would see simple towns, homes built from wood and clay, fields of grain waving in the wind, small workshops where tools were shaped by hand. But if you look closer, you would see the signs of something extraordinary. You would notice how a tool crafted in one valley ended up hundreds of miles away in a distant settlement. You would notice how woven cloth from one region appeared in a village that had never grown the plants used to dye it. You might hear a lullaby hummed by a mother, a lullaby that traveled across generations and across lands until it reached her from somewhere far beyond her home. This empire was not about control. It was about connection. Gold played an important part in the way this hidden empire formed, not because of wealth or power, but because of its gentle ability to travel. It was easy to carry, and its glow made it special. People used it as a way to honor a bond, mark a promise, or show gratitude. Gold became a symbol of trust more than anything else. Imagine a traveler arriving in a peaceful town after weeks on the road. The townspeople greet them warmly. Someone offers water, another offers a meal, and maybe the traveler, moved by the kindness, shares a small piece of gold they carry, a thin bead or a soft nugget. The townspeople accept it not as payment, but as a gesture of connection. That piece of gold then stays in the town until another traveler arrives, perhaps months later, and when the time comes, someone passes it along again. Slowly, piece by piece, gold began to map the threads of this hidden empire. But the empire itself was not built by gold. It was built by people who needed one another. Farmers relied on travelers to bring news. Travelers relied on towns for shelter. Craftspeople relied on distant places to share their creations. Hunters, fishers, weavers, and healers all played their part. And because no one ruled this world, there was no pressure, no fear, no demand for loyalty. People opened their homes to strangers because they understood that someday they might be the ones walking the long road, hoping for safety and warmth. This shared understanding was the true foundation of the hidden empire. Picture a quiet morning in this world. The sun rises slowly, spilling a soft glow across the land. A farmer gently tends to the fields, listening to birdsong. A caravan begins to pack up, moving unhurriedly as they prepare for another day of travel. A potter places new clay cups in the sunlight to dry. A child sits on a rock, playing with a small golden charm that once belonged to someone far away. No one stands above anyone else. No orders are given. Life simply moves, like a calm river finding its way around stones. What made this empire so powerful was the trust that flowed through it. Trust that one town would help another. Trust that travelers would be treated with compassion. Trust that good deeds would eventually circle back in their own time. This trust allowed ideas to travel just as easily as gold. People began sharing ways to grow better crops, new methods for shaping tools, remedies for illnesses, and tales of lands beyond the horizon. Over time, regional knowledge became shared knowledge. This was how the world quietly expanded. And all along the trade routes, this invisible empire grew larger, stretching through forests, deserts, mountains, and coastal plains. It was held together not by force, but by a kind of unspoken agreement between countless people who had never met, yet cared for one another through the choices they made. Even if someone never left their hometown, they were still part of this hidden empire. Their goods traveled, their stories traveled, their kindness traveled. The ripple of their existence reached far beyond what they could see. This idea is comforting, especially as you lie here listening. Just as those early people were connected through simple acts, you too are connected to countless others in ways you may never realize. A gesture of kindness has a way of traveling, quietly, gently, further than you think. The hidden empire without a crown reminds us that not all power is loud, not all influence is seen. Some of the most important things in history were built softly through friendship, curiosity, and shared humanity. And as gold moved through this empire, glowing softly in firelight or sunlight, it became a symbol of the warmth people carried within them, a warmth that guided them across long distances, a warmth that created a world where strangers helped strangers simply because that was the way things had always been done. Let yourself imagine this invisible empire stretching softly around you now. Threads of connection, fires glowing in distant towns, travelers walking ancient paths, people helping one another without knowing they were shaping a piece of history. Let the thought calm your mind. Let it relax your breath. Let your body grow heavier and more peaceful. Chapter 6. Gold's soft influence on kings and commoners. Before we step into this chapter, take a moment to settle again. Let your breath drift in softly and slip out even more softly. Feel your body growing heavier against the mattress or pillow beneath you. If your eyes are open, gently close them and let the darkness around you feel comforting, like a warm blanket for your mind. Let yourself drift into the story without effort, without strain. As the hidden empire stretched quietly across the land, gold continued its gentle journey. It passed from traveler to traveler, from village to village, sometimes moving only a few miles, sometimes traveling across entire regions. And though gold never demanded attention, people couldn't help but notice its glow. Both kings and commoners felt drawn to it, but they felt drawn in different ways, softened by their own lives, duties, and dreams. Imagine a simple farmer sitting by a small fire outside their home. Their hands are rough from the years of planting, harvesting, and tending animals. Life is humble but steady. One evening, a traveler stops by and shares a story from faraway lands. As the conversation winds down, the traveler offers a tiny piece of gold, a bead no bigger than a seed. The farmer accepts it with quiet wonder, not because it is valuable, but because it represents kindness from someone who had no reason to give anything at all. For common folk, gold was a reminder of connection, a memory, a token that held more emotion than worth. They might keep it in a small pouch, or wear it on a necklace, or pass it down to a child as a keepsake of a moment when the world felt a little warmer. Now picture a king sitting in a great hall. Tall pillars rise around them. The room is bright with polished stone and flickering torchlight. Servants move quietly. Scrolls lie stacked on a nearby table. The king listens to advisors talk about crops, borders, distant towns, and the movement of travelers. They hear, again and again, reports that gold has appeared in places they have never visited. Villages rich in culture but not in wealth now hold small pieces of this glowing metal. The king wonders how far these threads reach. They start to see gold differently than the common farmer did. Where the farmer saw a memory, the king saw potential, a symbol of connection that could stretch power beyond their borders, not through force, but through trade. And yet, even for kings, gold still felt mysterious. It did not shout its importance. It did not demand to be used. It simply existed, quietly influencing decisions and shaping the world. Gold's power was gentle. It didn't create sudden change. It softened opinions. It encouraged curiosity. It whispered possibilities. Commoners admired it for its beauty. Kings admired it for its stability. Both felt drawn to it in their own quiet ways. What made gold so fascinating was that it belonged to no one, and yet everyone could hold a piece of it. A child could cradle a tiny bead with the same sense of wonder as a ruler who held a larger piece in a grand hall. Gold was one of the few things in the world that made people feel connected to something bigger than themselves. Farmers would listen to travelers speak about lands where gold came from. Kings would listen to ambassadors from distant regions who spoke of gold mines and mountains rich with minerals. Craftsmen would melt gold into shapes inspired by nature or tradition. Healers would believe gold carried warmth that brought comfort to the sick. Gold traveled through all these worlds, whispering its presence, but never shouting for control. The influence of gold on common folk grew slowly. It made them curious about places they had never seen. It made them wonder about the stories behind each piece. And sometimes, when gold passed from one hand to another during a shared meal or a kind gesture, it created moments of connection that lasted long after the metal itself was forgotten. For kings, gold created a different kind of curiosity. They began to understand that the hidden empire stretching across the land was something they could not rule, but perhaps they could join. They sent envoys to learn more about trade routes. They welcomed travelers into their halls. They encouraged artisans to work with gold, not for grandeur, but for the beauty it brought into their lands. But no matter how much gold the king collected, its true influence lay beyond their reach, because gold wasn't powerful because of who owned the most. It was powerful because of how far it traveled, how many hands it touched, and how many stories it carried. In this quiet way, gold stood between kings and commoners like a soft bridge, a reminder that despite their differences in status and power, they were part of the same world. They admired the same glow. They wondered about the same distant lands. They felt the same sense of mystery when a piece of gold rested in their hands. This subtle influence created something rare, a shared feeling across people who might never meet, a sense that the world was more connected than they realized, that the same sun that warmed a farmer's face also touched the stones of a king's palace, that the same piece of gold could travel from a mountaintop village to a royal treasury, and then to a wanderer who cherished it for its quiet beauty. As gold passed from commoners to traders, from traders to kings, from kings back to travelers, it created a circle of influence that flowed gently across the land, not like a river, rushing and loud, but like a breeze, soft and steady. Even now, as you listen, you might imagine holding a piece of gold between your fingers, smooth, cool, heavy with history, a reminder of every soul who ever paused to admire it, a link to a world shaped not by force, but by curiosity and kindness. Let that thought rest gently in your mind, like a warm light on the horizon. Let your breath slow even more, soft and unhurried. Let your body relax as if you're sitting by a quiet fire in a peaceful village, listening to distant stories carried by travelers. Chapter 7. The Sunset of the Golden Paths. Before we begin this chapter, let your body sink a little deeper into wherever you are resting. Take a long, gentle breath in, and let it drift out slowly. If your eyes are open, let them close now, softly, without effort. Allow the world around you to fade, becoming a quiet blur in the background. In this moment, you are here only to rest, to listen, and to let the story guide you deeper into calm. For so long, the golden paths stretched across the land like threads woven through the fabric of early life. Travelers followed them. Towns grew because of them. Gold drifted along them like warm embers carried by the wind. The hidden empire flourished without a crown or ruler, built not from stone or steel, but from trust and connection. But even the gentlest paths eventually change. Just as the sun rises and sets each day, so too did the golden roots begin to shift, soften, and fade into something new. This sunset did not come suddenly. There was no moment of collapse or chaos. Instead, it arrived slowly, like twilight spreading across the sky at the end of a long afternoon. People barely noticed it at first, because life still felt familiar. Fires still glowed in the towns, caravans still passed through, gold still traveled quietly. But the world was changing. As towns grew, they began to develop customs, leaders, and ways of organizing life, not out of desire for control, but from the simple need to manage their growing communities. A village with a few dozen people might need only simple agreements, but a town with hundreds needed someone to settle disputes, someone to guard the stores of grain, someone to keep the peace when travelers arrived in large numbers. Leaders emerged naturally. Not kings, not yet. Just respected figures who people trusted. They guided the towns gently, but every choice they made caused small shifts in the flow of the golden paths. Trade began to take on new shapes. Markets started to form, no longer just spontaneous gatherings by firelight, but regular spaces where people met at specific times of the month. Goods had to be counted. Agreements had to be remembered. Slowly, the simplicity of giving and receiving evolved into something more structured. The golden roots still existed, but they were changing from soft threads of kindness into early lines of commerce. Imagine a traveler arriving at one of these growing towns. They might still be greeted with warmth, but now a guard stands at the entrance, not to turn them away, but to guide them to the right places. A small area is reserved for foreign traders. Shelters are built specifically for visitors. The town feels organized in a way that earlier settlements never were. Nothing is wrong, nothing is harsh or unkind. The world is simply maturing. When the traveler offers a small piece of gold, people still admire it, but now they might weigh it in their hands, comparing it to other pieces they have seen, not because they have lost appreciation, but because they have begun to understand its consistency, its rarity, its usefulness. Gold is no longer just a memory carried across lands. It is becoming something more. Gold becomes a measure, a way to track exchanges, a way to store value, a way for both commoners and leaders to feel secure. And because of this shift, the golden paths slowly begin to reorganize themselves. Routes that once flowed naturally now start to bend toward larger towns. Small villages that once thrived as resting points find fewer travelers passing through, simply because caravans prefer the safety and comfort of bigger communities. This was the beginning of the sunset. Not an ending, but a quiet transformation. Imagine an older villager standing outside their home at dusk. They look down the familiar path where caravans once appeared like clockwork. They remember the laughter of travelers, the stories shared by the fire, the nights when gold sparkled in the hands of strangers who passed through town. And now, only one or two small groups travel by each season. Life is still peaceful. The village is still warm. But the world is growing outward, shifting its center, forming new patterns. In a faraway city, early rulers begin to take interest in the movement of gold. They hear whispers that certain towns hold more of it than others. They learn that travelers follow specific routes because of safety, water, or trade. These rulers begin sending messengers, hoping to understand how the land connects and how they might guide those connections. Not to dominate them, but to be part of them. Gold, as always, remains quiet. It does not resist change. It does not cling to the past. It simply adapts, flowing along whichever paths people choose. And as the world becomes more organized, gold becomes more embedded in daily life. Instead of traveling freely with no destination, it starts to collect in certain places, in workshops where artisans craft jewelry, in early treasuries kept for emergencies, in markets where people trade food, fabric, tools, and livestock. It is as if gold itself is resting a little more than it used to. The golden paths still glow, but their glow is softer now, like the last light of evening resting on the horizon. The warmth remains, but the movement slows. And yet, even as the golden roots shift, something beautiful happens. People across the growing world understand, perhaps for the first time, how deeply connected they are. They realize that the tools they use came from faraway hands. The stories they tell were born in distant lands. The gold they hold has journeyed through countless lives before reaching theirs. The sunset of the golden paths is not the end of connection. It is the beginning of understanding. A deeper, wider, more aware understanding of how human lives intertwine. So as the final glow of those early roots fades, a new dawn begins to form, one shaped by larger towns, more organized trade, and the early steps toward civilization as we know it. But before that dawn rises, there is a quiet stillness, a calm moment where the world seems to sigh softly, as if grateful for the gentle era that came before. Let that stillness settle in your mind for a moment. Let your breath steady. Let your thoughts soften like the sky turning from gold to twilight. The sunset of the golden paths is peaceful, warm, and restful, just like you are becoming now. Chapter 8. The last echo of ancient footsteps. Before we begin this chapter, take a moment to settle yourself again. Let your arms rest loosely by your sides or tucked comfortably under a blanket. Feel the weight of your body resting, sinking, settling into stillness. Let your breath drift inward like a soft tide, and let it slowly flow back out. If your eyes opened for even a second, let them fall closed again. Everything is quiet now. Everything is soft. You are safe. You are warm. And the story is here to guide you gently into deeper rest. As the golden paths began to fade beneath the rise of new towns, new leaders, and new ways of living, something soft and beautiful remained behind. Footsteps, not the loud kind that echo through stone halls or announce their arrivals. These were the faintest footsteps, the sort that linger in memory rather than in sound. The last echo of ancient footsteps did not belong to just one person. They belonged to everyone who had ever walked those golden routes. Travelers who shared stories around firelight, farmers who welcomed strangers to their homes, craftsmen who exchanged goods with pride and gratitude, children who watched caravans disappear into the distance and dreamed of the world beyond the hills. These footsteps shaped the world long before anyone realized how important they were. They were woven into soil, carved into mountain passes, and gently pressed into riverbanks where travelers once washed their hands and faces after long days of journeying. Imagine standing at the edge of one of those old paths today. The grass grows tall where countless feet once walked. The air is quiet except for the wind brushing through the leaves. Birds sing softly. A river hums nearby. The path is almost hidden now, but not lost. If you look closely, you can see where the earth dips ever so slightly, where the ground remembers. That subtle memory is the last echo of ancient footsteps. These echoes aren't sad, and they aren't forgotten. They are peaceful reminders of a time when the world was connected by curiosity, kindness, and simple human warmth. The echoes tell stories without words, holding the memory of people who lived gently, who traveled with purpose, and who trusted in the goodness of strangers. As the world grew, new roads replaced the old ones. Larger towns became cities, leaders turned into rulers, markets became organized. Gold became valuable not just for its glow, but for its power to represent wealth. And yet, even in all this newness, the spirit of the old footsteps never truly disappeared. It lived quietly in people's habits, in the way a merchant greeted a stranger with a friendly smile, in the way a child treasured a small piece of gold passed down from a grandparent, in the way travelers shared news from distant lands, even in the way people found comfort around firelight, gathering with friends and family, telling stories the same way their ancestors once did under starlit skies. Life changed, but the warmth of the old world stayed. Let yourself imagine a small group of travelers in those times, walking one of the last stretches of the ancient route as the world around them begins to modernize. The path beneath their feet is familiar, yet quiet now. Birds flutter in branches overhead. The sun paints the landscape in soft colors. A gentle breeze carries scents of wildflowers and distant fields. One traveler pauses and looks behind them. They notice how the path fades into the distance, becoming harder to see the farther it stretches. The traveler smiles, not with sadness, but with gratitude. They know hundreds before them walked the same trail, carrying stories, goods, kindness, and gold along with them. They know the path shaped the world, even if it is no longer used the same way. The traveler continues forward, their footsteps pressing softly into the earth, and with each step, the world changes around them. The path slowly transforms from a wilderness trail into a small stone road leading toward a growing town. Children run nearby, laughing as they play. Merchants display their goods in organized stalls. The world is moving forward, becoming something new. But the traveler knows something important. They know that without those ancient footsteps, this new world could not exist. The echoes of the past guide the future, softly and quietly. This is the beauty of history. It stays with us, even when we no longer see it. The golden paths may fade, but the lessons they carried do not tear. The memory of trust, kindness, and connection remains woven into the way people live, trade, and dream. Even the kings of this new era, seated in halls of stone, never fully forget the origins of their prosperity. They know that long before they were born, the world was shaped by humble travelers, simple villages, and gold that moved not through force, but through friendship. And deep in the hearts of common folk, the old spirit lives on too. Mothers still teach their children to welcome strangers with kindness. Elders still share stories of faraway lands. Communities still gather in warmth to listen, to learn, and to laugh together. The sunset of the golden paths did not mark an ending. It marked a quiet beginning, a transition from one beautiful era to another, a sign that the world was ready to grow, but would never forget its gentle past. Gold became a symbol of wealth, yes, but from time to time a small bead or charm would be found in the corner of a dusty drawer or buried beneath a home. Someone would hold it up, see the glow, and wonder where it came from. They would turn it in their hand and imagine the countless footsteps that carried it. And in that moment, the ancient world would whisper to them softly like a warm breeze. These last echoes carry happiness with them, because they remind us that every era, even one that fades, leaves behind gifts for the future. Kindness, connection, curiosity, the simple human desire to understand the world and help one another within it. These are the treasures that remain long after footsteps vanish from the earth. So as you listen now, you can imagine these echoes fading gently into a soft glow, like the final light of day resting on a quiet field. The ancient travelers have finished their journeys. The small towns have grown into peaceful communities. The golden paths have seeped into memory, and the world is warm, thriving, and filled with the goodness those early people left behind. Let that warmth fill you as you lie here. Let the thoughts soothe you. Let your breath drift even slower now, as if you're walking a peaceful road at twilight, with nothing to rush toward and nothing to fear. This chapter ends with contentment, with comfort, and with the quiet happiness that comes from knowing everything turned out well. The world grew, the people flourished, and the echoes of ancient footsteps continue to guide us, gently toward understanding, kindness, and peace. Chapter 6. Resting beside the golden horizon. Before we begin this final chapter, take one more slow breath in. Let it settle, and let it drift out of you like a quiet sigh at the end of a long day. If your blanket is shifted, tuck it around yourself. If your shoulders have tenseness left in them, gently loosen them. And if your eyes opened even slightly, let them fall closed again, soft and heavy. You've traveled through centuries with me tonight, across old deserts, along forgotten rivers, past mountains carved by time, and over paths once lit by the soft glow of ancient gold. Now in this final moment of our journey, everything slows down. The world grows quiet, and we find a place to rest. Imagine the golden horizon at the edge of the world, not bright or blinding, just a warm, gentle glow that sits low in the sky, the way the last light of evening rests before night fully takes over. A horizon like this doesn't rush you. It waits for you. It feels patient, peaceful, and familiar, even if you've never seen it before. Tonight in the story, we arrive at that horizon. Picture yourself standing on a small hill that overlooks the land shaped by the ancient golden roots. Below you, the world stretches quietly. Old paths curve through fields like soft lines drawn by memory. A breeze travels across the tall grass, brushing it gently back and forth in a lazy rhythm that feels almost like breathing. In this moment, time doesn't matter. The past feels close but calm. The present feels open and safe. And the future feels like something warm and kind waiting farther down the road. You can imagine an old traveler sitting beside you on this hill. Someone who spent their entire life walking those golden paths. Their face is peaceful. Their clothes are worn but comfortable. Their hands rest gently on their lap. They do not speak. They simply sit there, sharing the quiet with you. And you can feel their calmness settle into you, a little at a time. The traveler looks out over the land with a small smile, the sort of smile a person gives when they know a story has come to its natural end. Not a sad end, not a dramatic end, just an end that feels right, complete, comforting. As you sit beside them, you start to understand something. The hidden empire built by those ancient gold routes was never really about the gold itself. It was about the people, the footsteps, the kindness exchanged from village to village, the trust that grew like soft roots beneath every settlement. the connection between distant places that learn to understand one another. This was the true empire, an invisible one, a gentle one, a human one. And because it lived in the hearts of millions over centuries, it never truly disappeared. Even now, in your world, small pieces of that quiet empire still exist. Whenever someone helps a stranger, whenever friends share stories late at night, whenever people come together across distances to trade, learn, or simply understand. Those moments are echoes of that ancient world. Soft, human, beautiful. As the last light fades on the horizon, the traveler beside you slowly lies back on the soft grass. Not because they are tired in a weary way, but because they have reached a gentle resting place at the end of a long, peaceful journey. The grass is cool beneath you. The sky above is deep and calm. A few stars begin to appear, quietly, as if they do not want to disturb the night. The breeze continues its slow rhythm, moving across you in a way that feels like the world itself is humming a lullaby. You feel safe here. You feel grounded. You feel at rest. This is the final page of the story, but it isn't a sharp ending. It's more like a candle slowly dimming, or a river easing into still water. A soft closing, not a final one. The traveler breathes quietly beside you, and you breathe quietly too. Everything that needed to be told tonight has been told. Every path has been walked. Every echo has faded into peace. The golden routes have led you not just through history, but gently toward this very moment of calm. And now, it's time to let the story fade into your dreams. Let your thoughts drift the way footsteps once drifted along ancient paths. Slowly, softly, without effort, without direction, just moving on their own, the way clouds drift across an evening sky. Feel your body settle even deeper into its resting place. Feel your breath become softer, like a gentle whisper. Feel your mind loosen its grip, one thread at a time. Nothing is needed from you now, not even listening. You can let go whenever you're ready. Let the world around you fade. Let the story become a warm blur. Let sleep rise up to meet you like a calm, quiet tide. And as you drift, remember this. The hidden empire built on ancient gold roots may be gone, but the peace it carried lives on in moments like this. Moments of rest. Moments of reflection. Moments of quiet human connection. Tonight, that calm belongs to you. You've walked through history. You've arrived at the golden horizon. And now it's time to rest. So allow yourself to drift softly, gently, warmly, into sleep. Good night, traveler. Your journey is complete. Rest well.